Hi again guys, and welcome to another installment of Pick of the Pack on Gran Turismo 6 in particular, the series for all of the needless duplicates of various vehicles, generally JDM cars though, which are featured in the franchise, but especially in Gran Turismo 6, simply because it's the newest game of the franchise to feature so many of these needless duplicate cars. And of course the Skyline overall is the worst for this. There are well over 100 variations of the Skyline, and of course that is if you include concepts, racing versions, aftermarket tuners, but that's not the purpose of this series. In this series we exclusively look at the production versions from the main dealership. And because there are so many Skylines, as I said in the R32 episode, we're breaking it down into generations, so the R32, 33 and 34 in particular. And in this pick, we're looking at the R33. Now this is my personal favourite version of the Skyline, but even then, I have to admit, of course, there are far too many versions of this car, even if you don't include stuff like the racing versions and the touring car, that kind of stuff. And so with that in mind, it raises the question, which ones are worth buying? Which is a fairly obvious answer. More often than not, it's the premium version. But with that being said, even if that is the case, are there other versions which are still worth buying to the average buyer or to the superfan? Well, let's find out, because there are only 3 different years for the R33, 1995, 96 and 97. So, we'll break it down as always in those individual model years and take a look. First up then we have 1995, and in 1995 we have the Spec V, the Standard GT-R and the GT-R N1. Now the prices vary a fair amount. The Standard GT-R is not too surprisingly the most affordable, and this particular version of it is actually the most affordable of all of the R33s at just under 48 grand, but the most expensive is all the way up to 60 grand for the N1. And funnily enough, this version of the R33, the N1, is actually the most expensive of all of the cars in this video, even the premium. Very interesting. Not necessarily worth paying that much for, but still interesting that it is the most expensive. Plus you need to bear in mind, if you are an N1 fan, this is the only version. There is no N1 in 96 or 97 to choose from. Now apart from that, the PP levels are slightly different. The N1 and the standard GT-R, funnily enough, actually have the same PP level, which doesn't make the N1 look too great, but the Spec V is slightly higher at 627, so it's 5 PP higher. The power is also higher, as is the torque, but, and this is interesting, the standard GT-R, which is also of course the most affordable, does weigh less, 1224 kilos, which is actually the lightest of all of the R33s, and is on par with the 1996 GT-R and the 97 GT-R. Very interesting that even though the normal GT-Rs are just that, the normal versions, they are still lighter than all of the other variants when tuned. Very interesting to bear that in mind. Overall then, for the 1995 shaped trio, the strongest overall in terms of how many great points it has and how many ways that it leads the pack here is the Spec V. It has the highest PP level, the highest power, the highest torque, and even though it's not the lightest, it does have the highest horsepower per ton. So if you're looking for the best all round, then go for the Spec V from this year. However, do not undercut the normal GT-R, because that one is both the cheapest and the lightest of this year, and as I said earlier, the cheapest of them all. So certainly a car to bear in mind. What then about 96? Well, for 1996 we have a particular version which I am a fan of, and that is the V-Spec LM edition, built of course to commemorate the Le Mans Racing R33 GT1s, which finished second overall, second only to the McLaren F1 in the Le Mans, which is pretty awesome for a Skyline to do that. And of course that car also spawned the Nismo LM road car. This one though, specifically, is essentially nothing more than just a fancy paint job. It's available in a very good looking blue, but at the end of the day it's not difficult to paint the others blue, so beyond that, does it have any merit? Well, to some degree, yes, because if you like to have the LM edition but don't particularly care about the blue, you do still get the same specs as the normal V-Spec. Thankfully though, unlike vehicles like the Midnight Purple editions, it actually costs almost the same as the normal Spec V. It's only about 600 credits more, so not really much between the two. The PP level, the power, the weight, in fact in every way, it's exactly the same as the Spec V. However, the standard GT-R from this year, just like the 95 GT-R, is lighter. As I said earlier, of course, 1224 kilos, they are the lightest of them all. All of the standard GT-Rs are. In terms of all the other ways though, except price, it's not as good. Lower PP, lower power, lower torque, and lower horsepower per ton. However, once again, the price is lower. It's a little bit more than the 1995 GT-R, but still, it's pretty affordable. 48,250 credits is not that much at all. Overall then, the standout from 1996 is definitely the LM edition, not because it's necessarily better than the Spec V, but because it's just the special edition, so it makes a great collector's piece. Unfortunately, it's still not a premium, but still, for the R33 fan, myself included, it's worth noting. What then about the final year? The year which of course brings us the premium version, 1997. Well, for 1997, not only do we get the premium version, but we actually lose a version, because for this year we don't have an LM edition or an N1 edition, there's just the jump straight from GT-R to Spec V. And of course the GT-R is once again more affordable and lighter, but the Spec V is the strongest. And it's not just the strongest of these two, I would say it's definitely the best overall. In some ways it's clearly the best. The PP level, thanks to a flat floor, is far higher at 657, not even close in fact, it's 30 PP points higher than the nearest thing. The power is far higher at 909, the torque is far higher at just under 750, and even though the weight isn't the lightest, it actually weighs the same as all of the other Spec Vs and the N1 and the LM. So 1232 kilos actually isn't bad. All of the R33s weigh either 1224 or 1232. And as far as horsepower per ton, even though it's not the lightest, it does still have the highest horsepower per ton of them all, thanks to having significantly more power. So overall, although the price is a little bit higher on the premium, of course it is the obvious choice to go for, and if you're only going to buy one R33, just like with pretty much all of the cars in this series, yes, it is the one that I would recommend. It is the best one overall, and it is the fastest. Plus, of course, you have the better visuals, the better sound, detailed interior, visual tuning. It's pretty much better in every reasonably important way, apart from price and weight, which, of course, they are important, but it's not exactly bad in that regard either. And so that begs the question, after reviewing all of these models, all 8 of them, from the 3 model years, which ones are actually worth buying? Well, the number one choice is of course the premium. That's the obvious one, you knew that before clicking on this video, no surprises there. So that one is the dead cert. If you're only going to buy one, then make it that one. However, as far as 95 and 96 go, I would say that the most significant one from 95 is potentially the N1. Not because it's amazingly good, but because it's the only N1 edition of all of them. But, at the same time, from 96, the V-Spec LM edition is also very notable for obvious reasons. It is, of course, the not quite homologation car, but special edition based around its success at the Le Mans. So overall there are 3 which are kind of notable, and then the original 95 GT-R is the most affordable of them all, which is of course a clear advantage there. Although they don't exactly cost that much overall anyway. The N1 is a 60 grand car, so even that doesn't vary by a massive amount. Overall then, there are 3 which you could check out, but only one which is essential, which is obviously the premium. And that pretty much wraps it up for the R33 Skyline. So of course, if you are new to the channel or new to the series and you would like to check out more cars that we've already covered, you can click through to see those at the end of this video. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.